One day I heard from a dirty little bird there's an unsolved mystery. There's a horse statue in every town square and no one seems to know why. So I gathered up my mates and I hollered from the gate. Sorry dear, but I won't be back at least a couple days. And I blew her a kiss and I raised my fist and I gave my boys said to take it to wheel. There's a horseman statue in town square and no one seems to know why. So we're heading up now to some distant land to see him on the very own eyes. And discover what the origin, the reason and the right. And we're gonna solve the bloody river good this time. I will ask a lot of questions, I will drink a little beer. There's a little on the shoe size and think real clear. And we're never coming home, not together or alone. If we haven't found a winner, we can beat this bone. And we'll round the ball of players and the judges and the queer. And we'll ask a lot of questions, and we'll drink a lot of beer. And we'll make it with the locals and the very little ball. Because he'll do with the pilot in the crew or a drum. If we never make it home, you'll know why, my dear. You can blame the mystery of the horseman in town square.
I thought that this deserved a bit of clarification. I did a slideshow of this a few months back of a few hundred of these failures that I'd gathered. At last count, there's about 1,200 that I know of equestrian statues scattered throughout the realm. It was kind of a long slideshow, and it was a little ineffective, I think. Many of the file types I used for some reason didn't even register, so I left a lot of them out. So I've gone back and I've actually painstakingly labeled each of them. I separated them by region because it's breaking up into bits, but I wanted to refocus back on these because I wanted to be clear about what my thoughts were. So I'm just going to let these play so you can get the idea of how many of these, and the variety of them, or lack thereof, that are scattered throughout Asia. And I include Russia and Turkey. Europe had plenty of their own. We'll get to that. But I'm just kind of using this as a backdrop with which to muse about my worldview, to show possible little clarity as to the area of non-expertise that I'm coming from. To people who are unsure about the idea that something could be actively working against us or deceiving us, or that there's a concerted effort, an enemy against us as humans in some form. They often say things like, well, who's they? You say they want this and they want that. Who's they? Well, that question is not only not really of interest too much to me, as far as my focus, or whatever they is, whatever the enemy of man is, whether it's a pervasive idea, whether it's a flaw that we struggle to overcome, whether it's a parasite on the microbial level, or a parasite of another species, whether it's demonic, whether it's alien, whether it's any of these things, for the sake of this allegory that I'm going to try to just lay down, and I put this in sort of a myth. By myth, I mean story with which we can relate to, not necessarily something that's true or legendary, but something put into terms so that we can understand how it works. And this is, of course, just my own opinion, my own way of looking at it. I'm not saying this is literally the way it is at all, but it seems as if there's some sort of system like this occurring to us. And whatever it is, or they need humans. It requires humans for this to work. When I travel to different countries, as most people do, you do a little bit of legwork. And whether you're as unprepared as purchasing a little manual that's like how to speak Portuguese in 20 minutes or whatever and on the flight, or you buy a travel guide, or you look at forums online, you try to determine certain things to help you prevent social mistakes or miscue. How much is the tip percentage is considered rude? What side of the road do they drive on? What customs are considered strange? You take your shoes off when you enter homes. Do you bow? Do you kiss the elderly's cheek? There's a number of things. Are your electronic appliances compatible with the plugs? How will you exchange your money? There are things that obviously make us different from region to region, from land to land. Very different. Artistically, stylistically, whether it's culinary, whether it's dress, whether it's home style, decorative. All of these things are very different from land to land and from people to people. Oddly, we don't hate each other for those things. We're not told that we hate each other for those things, despite the wild differences. We are always told that we hate each other about the way we look, and we're told that we're different races. I don't really see it that way. A mountain lion and a German shepherd on the surface makes more sense to me to be a parental couple than a Great Dane and a Chihuahua. That looks patently ridiculous. Yet, the Great Dane and a Chihuahua can procreate, and a mountain lion and any dog cannot. Because they're different species, they're different races. We, as far as I know, from any human, from any land in this earth, can procreate potentially with any other. Okay, so we are the same thing. No one is born hating someone with a different hair color, skin color, or different any appearance. Like, those things are taught. They're learned. Whether it's you're told that, well, we hate them because what they've done to us in the past for hundreds of years, which on the face of it is ridiculous. It's like the Johnsons and the Wilsons have been fighting for years. The family feud started years ago, and nobody knows how. But by now, so many atrocities have been done, this feud will never end. They've killed so many of each other, and so this is almost a generational hatred gets passed down. And that's what I feel like happens to us. We are told about all these battles and all these horrendous things that happened to millions, who killed each other by the millions. We're told that. There may be evidence to support that, but there are also a lot of reasons why people go to war. Are we sure that race has ever been one of them? So to me, if we had an amnesia, a memory wipe, everyone on Earth, would racism redevelop? I think it's pretty unlikely, unless there's some coercion or encouragement along the way. At least if these little tiny coals, weirdos, are stoked and empowered, or lied to on a mass scale, in order to keep us hating each other. The last thing they would want is anything united. Leads you to the question of, well, who would do such a thing, and how could that even be possible? Well, to me, someone has had their hands in all the pots, of all the kitchens, of all the peoples of the earth. There's a lot of reasons I believe this, and one of them are these equestrian statues that we find in town after town, state after state, province after province, country after country, nation after nation. We find them everywhere. Now why? Are they artistic? Because that kind of doesn't make sense, and that our art is very different. Chinese art is very different from a Persian art, or country western art. Despite all of our years of being adversaries, we share the same custom in our courtyards? Why would this be the same everywhere you go, with as only slight variation? Everything else is different when you travel. The stores are different. The crackers are different. There's a couple things that are consistent from land to land. Cell phones, computers, calculators, those all look the same. Power plants, cable lines, trolleys, trams, trains, look the same. Modems, keyboards, your computer devices, computer consoles, they're the same. No one ever handed you a payphone, you didn't know what it was, how to work it. So that leads me to the theory that these possibly had something to do functionally. And in the way that the older world would create beautiful buildings, they made something functional. They said, well, if we have to have these large bronze or copper transistors or whatever it may be, antennas, we have to have them, we might as well make them look artistic. It's often a figure from a legend or a general, whether or not they're loved or hated. It's often a war hero or a rebel, a freedom fighter, and they're often charging into battle or charging or uplifting a sword, or they look as if they're approaching a new land, surveying, or they are even slaying a dragon, literally. And they repeat patterns. There's a George Washington one in France. There's many of the same Simon Bolivar is everywhere. Many countries. They're often made of the same material. They often always have something like outstretched, a sword in their arm, or they're leading a charge, or they're firing a gun, or sometimes you have one that's like a child. Sometimes you have one that's a naked person. Sometimes you have someone standing next to the horse, sort of leading them. And that's about where the differences end. They're always on a pedestal, and they are almost always in the center of town square. Often in a fountain. Sometimes you find them in museums or parks, but yet there they are. And we don't really seem to notice them except when we're rioting and protesting. Then we just, we pull them down. For example, who's the one in your town? How long has it been there? Who's had the say in putting it there and choosing and commissioning the artist and choosing this person? So it seems to me that it can't just be a coincidence. It can't be something we just universally enjoy. It has to have some deeper meaning to my brain, to my brain. So when I say it's a tech piece, then that's, of course, very hard to determine. For me, I don't know what it could be. Perhaps it used to be always in a fountain. Water and steam, I believe, played a much larger role in our society and energy extraction than we're told. The reason why there are tunnels and caverns underneath most cities, and most of which we've turned into sewer lines, is I think they used to keep cisterns of water underneath the cities, and they would bubble up through the fountain in the town square for the people. There's a purifying aspect, perhaps, to copper. Maybe that's something to do with it. Or perhaps it had to do more with wireless sort of antenna in the center of town square that had something to do with the gathering of energy out of the ether in the water. I'm not certain. There may be some legs to that, because of the material used, usually. That's just reckless speculation, of course. I'm trying to figure out what function it could serve. Maybe it's used to communicate something, and kind of a symbol, in a way. So who and what could this possibly be, and why? So that's the first option. The first option is maybe it's functional, like a cell phone tower that's made to look like a tree. This is some sort of out-of-use tech that we had everywhere, and we decided to make them heroic looking, or sort of blend in a time where statues were more common. Many of them seem to have appeared sometime in the 1800s, or created or commissioned in the 1800s, often by girlfriends or wives of prominent, wealthy people. Various coal magnates and a who's who of society gets to design and sculpt and create and cast many of these, we're told. Of course, this is all reckless speculation. If this kind of thing irritates you, liken it to an overzealous guard dog. It barks at everything that moves outside. Every stranger walks by, okay, he might be a little annoying, but you're still grateful for it. You're not mad at him for barking and everything, because every now and then, he's right. Even the people that are out here with wild ideas, they're doing it they're coming from the right place. They're trying to protect people and trying to alert people to possible danger. So, yeah, I'll be nice to the guard dogs. I have a dog that does that. He wakes me up 10 times a night barking at random crap. Random stuff. Who knows? Somebody chatting on the street. The sound somehow made his way down the chimney to his ear. He's off running. And he'll wake you up and piss you off. But there was a time when he barked in the early hours of the morning. And I went to explore the source and found that my house was on fire. One of the rooms was on fire. And I don't know if he saved my life. Very likely, but he definitely saved everything out from being burned. Instead of just a piano. You need your guard dog. So this guard dog here is barking at these statues because I just don't trust them. Let's just say the enemy is an idea. And the idea takes form and manifests. Wherever it goes, we call it tyranny. Let's call it a pervasive idea just for this exercise. And the enemy is tyranny. We know it is tyranny. Where it takes roots, say, Nazi Germany. It doesn't matter if the Allies win, because it hitches a ride back to America. And then now suddenly, slowly invades their system. And suddenly we are the ones with bases everywhere. We're the ones instigating battles and conflicts. We're the ones trying to control the world suddenly. And the people of this country are like, what has happened while we just been trusting that all was on the up and up? Because tyranny doesn't care what faction it is, what country it is, who it affects. It doesn't care. It kills its host and then jumps to a new animal. It just desires to control, to suppress, to monitor, to suppress, and to enslave, and to use, to feed itself. I'm not saying this is happening literally, but figuratively. And the forsworn opponent of tyranny is liberty, which is essentially the ability for people to live individual lives in the manner they choose, love who they choose, and do the things they'd like to do without interfering with anyone else's ability to have the same right. Tyranny wants to control what you do. So where am I going with all this? How do these dots connect? I think it doesn't matter what these statues were. If they were functional, maybe they're functional in a different way. See, they look to me awful like a trophy. Picture, if you will, a feudal lord system of control. We have little kings, little kingdoms scattered everywhere, with varied size of kingdoms. Some of them are very, very large and affluent. Some of them are much smaller. And they pass things ruled down through their children, for the most part. Every now and then there's a coup or the line changes, but for the most part, that's the idea. Sort of inherited. And they have uneasy alliances, and sometimes they are true allies, but more often than not, they just are keeping an uneasy alliance because, you don't want to go to war and kill all your subjects and have no one to rule over. But they know it's possible. And they get together and they compare notes once or twice a year and share ideas on how they're ruling their kingdoms better. Now, in place of kings, instead, this system uses little committees. Little committees of varied sizes of people. We call them governments. And all these little committees, and again, I don't speak literally, it's figuratively, they watch each other. They compare notes. They talk to each other. Once or twice or 3 times a year, they get together and they compare notes, and only the best ones, are the ones that are doing it most efficiently, who have the largest kingdoms and have the most bustling economies, or the biggest military. They get together and they make the big decisions. And this is a special club, you see. Your kingdom has to sort of pay their dues and before they're let in on the bigger secrets and the bigger trades. And if you try to come up on the outside of that, pave your own way, no, you'll get crushed, you'll get sanctioned. They might even go and invade and kill you, your leader, and rob your country, and rob your land. They might, so you better play ball. And they might call these meetings something like G8s and G16s and stuff like that. The bigwigs to get together. But if you're like Iran, or if you're like Libya, or you try to get uppity on your own without paying your dues, and you're not in the club. In the club, you only get to have certain things. There are certain levels of control. There are certain secrets that only the big boys are allowed to have, like a space program or a nuclear program. That's for the elite amongst the elite of these committees. For a while now, America has been putting on a master class of control. Their kingdom is run so well that the citizens don't even realize they're slaves. They think they're free and individual. Lately, seems to be several kingdoms that are kind of in a king of the mountain power struggle. But they collaborate on things like space program, nuclear weapons, inspections. There's some rogue ones doing it randomly, like somehow North Korea got in on was allowed to get in on the nuclear program game. They're allowed to fire one off every now and then. And the leader there, the king there, wants to remind the people that they're still powerful. Okay. And they kind of let him have his thing, for whatever reason. There's some disagreement and an uneasy alliance among some of them. And of course it helps if the other kingdoms respect and look up to you and or are afraid of you. This can only help your kingdom. And you don't really want the citizens of your kingdom to be talking to someone else's too much. Don't get too cozy. So in a sense, you must constantly tell your citizens that these other kingdoms are indeed very different from you and they're your enemy. And they're very different from you in every way and they hate you and you share nothing in common. So we think we're the most freest beings ever. And maybe we are within the confines of government because of a few feisty people and patriots in the very beginning managed to push through some documents that are being trampled on currently, but we try to hold them dear. They're our last little line of defense, we tell ourselves, against truly having control over our country. But we don't have control. The committees do. The governments do. And they have for a long time. And so since I believe this is some form of analogy to what is currently happening, well, we're the poster child. We've got our hands in everyone's pie. But we have been pumped up with patriotism, and for 100 years, we were always taught and told that everything we did out there in the world, all our interferences were for the greater good. We were fighting tyranny, and we're installing democracy everywhere. And now a lot of people really, Americans, are looking around going, wait a second. It doesn't seem like that's what's happening when our boys are coming back home and what they're saying. Or when immigrants are moving here, what they're saying. We have the internet, we can communicate with these other kingdoms. And now these kings are getting a little uneasy about this communication because we're starting to compare notes and find that things aren't exactly the way that they've told us. And we can throw away this feudal system, hopefully. But that brings us back to these. So maybe whatever they were, they've been repurposed. Maybe. Maybe there was an antenna there of bronze and they've been taken down and later on cast into a bronze mold and re-put up as a mockery. Maybe. It's a long shot though. But maybe it's something else. So maybe when you go back to the 1800s when these were installed mostly everywhere, that's when it began. There's a few that they claim were older, but maybe in a world without digital communication, when you're arriving to town horseback to horseback, and maybe in the way that you put your flags out and your cannons out and your memorials out. I mean, every state has one of these. Small towns have them. You might be surprised to find one that's in your town. Well, does it mean anything to you? They used your money to make it. Did you get a vote on it? Was it on a ballot? Where'd they come from? Who gets to choose who's on it? Why are there some criminals and why are there some outlaws and people who are terrible? Is it supposed to be inspirational? But to me, it looks like kind of a mockery in a way, because a horse to be ridden, you have to. Well, the term is to break it in. Now, I know they're more humane about it now in most places, and they use less softer terminology, but breaking it in is what you're doing. You're breaking its will, and it's conforming, you're submitting it to your will. However you do it. Peacefully, through coercion, through violence, through persistence. And the idea that we ride these things to battle just seems horrific now. Can you imagine? You have this companion under you that you've grown to love. You've been on journeys together. It's sustained you and carried you great distances at greater speeds and gave you more access to whatever accomplishing wherever you were going, pulling your wagons, whatever it is. And can you imagine taking this creature and riding it straight into a war scene where its chances are it's going to get shot, its legs cut off from under it, gashed with a spear, at the very least smashed against other horses, or running through a battlefield full of broken arrowheads or explosives? It just seems so difficult for me to imagine taking this, and the screams of the dying horses everywhere. It must have just been horrific. And the horses would be terrified the whole time and not understanding, and forced to be kind of cruel and tough in order to just stay alive. And such a wanton waste of life, and a cruel thing to do to a creature that is, for all intents and purposes, very graceful, very beautiful, and very easy to love, not cruel. And that reminds me more of what we're actually like. So who really are we, the common folk? Are we the person on the back of the horse, or are we the horse? Because I think most of us would fall in the category of being more similar to the horse. We are the ones being forced into go to battle. We are the ones sending our kids who don't want to fight and die against other people's kids who don't want to fight and die. We are the one that gets the remains sent back home. The rider just finds a new horse. We are the ones being broken and ridden into battle and forced into labor for them. So to my mind, it seems more of a sick mockery. And on top of that, in addition to, or possibly in lieu of that, perhaps it's a calling card. Back in the day when you're traveling from town to town, or you're visiting another kingdom, let's say. What are you going to do, call ahead? There's no way to figure out what's going on there when you arrive. Well, when you get there, you probably go to town square, right? Where the banks are, where the money exchange is, where the market is, where whatever it is. Now, maybe it's more of a trophy that you've earned when your government reaches a level of stability, when your king or committee enters a level of, when it graduates into the realm of stable region or controlled civilization, able to trade with the others, finally has control of their subjects, reined in the rebels. It doesn't matter what the rebel is. It doesn't matter if it's religious, political. In a way, it's a calling card. It's a trophy. So when you roll into a place like this, in their mind, you see the horse statue and you think, okay, well, this one's playing the game. This one's under somewhat control. Such control, in fact, that they were able to somehow conscript someone or commission someone to construct and get the permission or the ability or just force it through or to put one of these in town square right by the Capitol. And when people on the streets rebel, they tear them down often, almost as a knee-jerk reaction. And you've lost control. They tore your statue down. They smashed your trophy. Better get it under control, bud. Show us that you can be stable and keep contributing. But they've got some level of control to be able to get this everywhere. Despite all our cultural differences, we all randomly accept this. Now, that's just what it seems like, what it could be to me. A calling card, a flag, a mockery, a monument. And some of them are very trophy-like. But I think if you sit down with just about anyone, no matter where they are, you'll find the things they all want in life are relatively simple. They want to love who they want to love and the way they want to love them. They want to raise their families in the type of environment they want that they think is healthy. They want to be able to eat and provide basic needs for their family. They want to give opportunities to their children. They want peace. They want liberty. They're the same thing as you, with few exceptions. What they don't want is tyranny. If they're anything like me, they don't want to be the rider or the horse. They want to take the saddle off and slap it on its butt and watch it run off in the meadow to find its own tribe. And you maybe want to chase after it, or you just maybe want to turn around and go home. But I don't think you want to ride it into battle. And I don't think you want to break its will. So this battle, this enemy, the way it wins is not by kicking your door down and smashing you in the face, usually, and bridling you and physically forcing you to work. They're much more subtle than that, because they realize there are literally billions of us, and there are literally thousands of them. This type of battle doesn't take place in the courtyards and in the streets, not for long, not the important parts. Those exist in our minds, in our spirits. And if we can all agree to have something as silly as this in common, then I think that we can agree to things that we actually care about, too. So one way that we can flip this on them, our enemy seems to do, and that's twist everything. Twist a system of freedom and patriotism and nationalism. People who are excited about where they live and when they want to make it great, twist that into being somehow evil. If they want to twist people who want to make their own decisions regarding their own health into being the villain, enemy, the evil, from what I know of it, can never really truly create. It simply twists and warps. So then, instead of playing whack-a-mole, since we have one of these in every town, maybe we just need to think differently about them. So I look at these as future Bible heroes leading us away from tyranny, away from the division, knowing that somewhere on the other side of the world is also looking at one. It's in their town square too. And we are united whether or not we know it. You can choose to doubt and believe the humans are bad, and then that may be all that you'll see in them. If you're looking for reasons to believe in the good in humanity, you will find it. If you're not open to miracles, it won't happen. You won't notice it. Though this might be a calling card for them, their mockery, or whatever function they use it for. Whatever it is. Maybe it's just art. Okay. Well then, let's use it in the way that the art is used, and that's to inspire. And it may not seem like it'll make a difference ever, anywhere. But when you see one in your town, or anywhere you're at, I hope that you smile to yourself. Think about this, and maybe it won't seem so lonely. That science tells us about certain mass delusions and psychosis. That the breeding grounds for this type of phenomenon to take place is that you have a society or a kingdom full of lonely, isolated people. Whether or not you believe anything I'm saying. Maybe you think, I don't know, man, it's just a statue to me. Fine. You look at this statue. May it cause you to pause and reflect on what I've said here. Now, it empowers me, and I think only of unity. I don't pretend like I have some inside info on what's going on in the world. I don't speak from my expertise. These are just the analogies that I use, are just for me to try to make sense of the world. It's just a way for me to focus on something and give me direction. It's sort of like a sprawling board game. Not Parker, but like Monopoly. Like a complex board game. And you fellow nerds out there, you know what I'm talking about. When you have a big game with multiple paths to victory, and you don't even know where to begin, sometimes you just need an objective or two to sort of get you going, give you some direction on which way to start. That's why I may come up with certain ideas and try to use them to inspire me to put stuff out that people will appreciate, or at least enjoy, or at least be amused by, and try to ignite a light of fire with anyone that I can, to remind them that you have friends out there, though you may not know them yet. And maybe we're never going to win. Maybe that's not what the point of this place is. Maybe it's all just a struggle, and you and everyone you know breakdowns and dies. And maybe that's all it'll ever be. But it could be better. I feel it's our duty to try to make it better. And that's what my goal is, just to make it better. Whether it's a ridiculous mockery, whether it's the music, whether it's Stu barking at every car that goes by. Because if it's better for you, it's better for me. A rising tide will lift all ships, we're told. And they will be always trying to get control, because that's what this enemy does. That's what they do. That's the only thing they know how to do. It will be a fight to the end. But to what end? So, there it is. A Hail Mary of hope coming from a nobody. A random citizen in a land full of random citizens. A dreamer and possibly eccentric with naive idealism. Maybe so. Well, whatever I am. On this platform, I'm WhisperJack. And I am your friend, if you like it or not. And I will stand in the gap. Alone if I have to. But I've never had a problem making friends. And I think even in this mission, I'll be able to find myself one day in good company in that gap. Remember, in the world that this tyranny, this idea, this enemy, has in store for you, there's no place in it for you. There's no place in it for your dreams or your ideals, your individualism, your freedom. There's no place in it for you to own personal property. They don't want you to raise your children the way you want them. They want you to be a sexless, genderless, sterile, single, lonely slave, living in a pod, plugging into whatever they want to fill your head with to distract yourself from your existence. This is about, they want their control level that they desire, that it desires, is complete, which means there is no place in it for you as a human. The struggle is for humanity. The battlefield is the mind. And everyone out there, every person, is on your side, whether or not they realize it yet. All my hope and my love and my energy, my heart goes out to all of you, whoever you are, whatever your circumstance may be, wherever you are in your journey. Even if you're smiling at how ridiculous this may seem to you, every smile is a mission accomplished. So on that note, that I'll see you soon.